Somewhere in the eastern Pacific Ocean, 300 nautical miles southwest of Colombia, a vessel was running without lights. No flag, no AIS transponder, no identifying markings of any kind. What it did carry was 40 tons of cocaine, 99% pure, compressed into waterproof bales stacked floor to ceiling inside a hull engineered for a single purpose: to be invisible. The crew had reasons to feel confident. The semi-submersible rode with roughly 80% of its profile beneath the waterline, presenting a radar cross-section barely distinguishable from wave clutter. Its route cut through the deepest, most isolated stretch of the Pacific shipping corridor, hundreds of miles from the nearest Coast Guard station, beyond the practical patrol range of conventional law enforcement aircraft. The Sinaloa cartel had moved product through this lane dozens of times. The ocean had always been large enough to hide in. Tonight, the ocean was considerably smaller than they thought. At 1:31 a.m. on October 23, 2025, the kill chain was already running. It had not been triggered by a tip, a radar contact, or a visual sighting. It had been triggered by heat. The KH-11 Kennen reconnaissance satellite orbiting 500 kilometers above the Pacific surface operates a digital electro-optical sensor package capable of resolving objects at roughly 10 centimeters from space. It is not designed to hunt drug submarines. It is designed to find anything that does not belong. And a diesel engine running hard in open ocean generates a thermal plume that does not belong, regardless of how well the hull above it is engineered. The satellite flagged the anomaly, classified it, and transmitted encrypted coordinate data via the Link 16 tactical network to the Combat Information Center of the USS Kidd, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer operating as the command element of Task Force 36, before the crew of the semi-submersible had any reason to believe they had been seen. Detection phase complete. Elapsed time, under 2 seconds. The KH-11's data package was immediately routed to a P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft holding at 25,000 feet over the search area. The Poseidon is the naval aviation equivalent of a flying operations center, a platform that fuses satellite relay, surface search radar, signals intelligence, and AI-driven target analysis into a single crew-operated system. Its AN/APY-10 multi-mission radar swept the designated coordinates and returned a contact. The onboard processing system cross-referenced the return against a classification library covering everything from container ships to fishing trawlers to whale pods, assigned a 99% probability match to semi-submersible vessel signature, and flagged the contact as confirmed hostile. What had started as a faint infrared anomaly in a satellite feed was now a geotagged, AI-verified target. The kill chain tightened another link. On the flight deck of the USS Kidd, an MH-60R Seahawk, call sign Viper 321, lifted off and headed for the contact coordinates at low altitude. The Seahawk's role in this architecture is to close the distance that satellites and high-altitude patrol aircraft cannot. At 50 feet above the wave tops, its APS-153 multi-mode radar operates in a regime that removes most of the sea clutter that degrades higher altitude detection. As the aircraft swept over the designated area, the radar return sharpened and then revealed something the P-8 had not resolved from altitude. There were two vessels, not one. A second semi-submersible was moving in loose trail formation behind the first, using the acoustic and radar shadow of the lead vessel to reduce its own signature. It was a documented cartel tactic, running a decoy in front to absorb initial attention, while the primary cargo vessel used the distraction to diverge. Tonight, it solved nothing. The Seahawk's forward-looking infrared pod painted both heat signatures simultaneously and transmitted the imagery in real time to the tactical screens inside the Kidd's Combat Information Center. The crew of the lead vessel still had no idea they were being watched. The pilot held position at distance, maintaining surveillance without triggering any electronic emission that might alert the targets, while the tactical action officer aboard the Kidd assessed the picture. 5 minutes of observation confirmed the vessel's course, speed, and separation. Then the Seahawk descended further and deployed the AQS-22 airborne low-frequency sonar, a towed array lowered into the water to listen for propeller signatures beneath the surface chop. The acoustic profile of a diesel-powered semi-submersible running at speed is as distinctive as a fingerprint. Both contacts registered clearly against the ambient noise floor. Every layer of the detection architecture had now confirmed the same two targets. From orbit to flight deck to ocean surface, the picture was complete and unambiguous. The enforcement phase was not going to involve missiles or naval gunfire. This was a law enforcement operation. The objective was seizure and arrest, cargo intact, crew alive and in custody, chain of evidence preserved for prosecution. What it would look like from the outside, however, was the full weight of a destroyer's integrated combat network focused on 2 vessels that had nowhere left to go. A 7-meter rigid hull inflatable boat was lowered from the Kidd's deck into the Pacific swell. The U.S. Coast Guard Law Enforcement Detachment aboard, equipped with M4 carbines, night vision systems, and body armor, embarked and the RHIB accelerated to over 40 knots. Its navigation display fed directly by the Seahawk overhead. The helicopter was transmitting target position, bearing, and speed updates continuously into the RHIB's system, painting the intercept corridor as precisely as a GPS track. The cartel crew was running along a corridor they could not see toward a net they did not know was already closed. The radio challenge came over VHF Channel 16, the International Maritime Distress and Calling frequency in both English and Spanish. Vessels operating without navigation lights in this sector. This is a United States Navy warship. You are directed to stop your engines immediately. Non-compliance will result in the use of disabling force. Respond now. No response. The lead vessel's exhaust stack threw up a black column of smoke as the crew pushed its engine to redline. The hull began cutting an erratic zigzag pattern across the swells, the standard evasion protocol designed to complicate a tracking solution from a pursuing surface vessel. Against a single boat without overhead support, it might have bought minutes. Against a system where the Kidd's Aegis Combat Management Suite was processing the target's movement and projecting intercept geometry in real time, it accomplished nothing. Aegis was built to track ballistic missile trajectories. Projecting the course of a fleeing semi-submersible at 30 knots introduced no meaningful computational load. The RHIB's recommended intercept heading updated automatically every few seconds. The warning period had expired. At 1:42 a.m., the tactical action officer aboard the Kidd issued the disabling fire authorization. The Seahawk repositioned over the lead vessel's stern. The GAU 21.50 caliber machine gun, mounted on the aircraft's doorframe, rotated into firing position. What happened next had nothing in common with the popular image of a helicopter gunship suppressing an area with uncontrolled bursts. The gunner was not using his eyes to aim. The weapon was slave to the aircraft's targeting pod, and the pilot had designated a single point on the lead vessel's hull with a laser marker, the engine compartment, directly above the propulsion system. The laser spot was invisible to anyone on the surface below. To the helicopter's pod, it was a precise aiming reference that did not waver regardless of aircraft movement. The GAU-21 fired. The rounds impacted the designated point with the consistency of a drill press. The engine block absorbed a controlled burst of .50 caliber ammunition at a rate of over 1,000 rounds per minute and came apart. The vessel's propulsion stopped instantly. Black smoke replaced the diesel exhaust column. The hull settled into a slow, powerless drift. Total elapsed time from first satellite detection to engine disabled, 18 minutes. The second vessel did not interpret what had just happened as a reason to comply. Its crew watched the lead submarine go dead in the water and responded by turning its bow directly toward the approaching RHIB, not to escape, but to ram. The threat assessment in the Kidd's Combat Information Center shifted categories immediately. This was no longer an evasion. It was an attack on U.S. Navy personnel. The tactical action officer did not deliberate. The Seahawk rolled, acquired the second target, and fired a single AGM-114 Hellfire missile. The weapon covered the distance between aircraft and target in under 3 seconds. The semi-submersible ceased to exist as a coherent structure. The debris field dispersed across a 100-meter radius of ocean surface. The engagement was over before the RHIB crew had finished processing the order to hold position. The law enforcement detachment boarded the disabled lead vessel within minutes. 5 crew members offered resistance that ended quickly. The rest surrendered without further incident. The team moved through the interior with the efficiency of a unit that had rehearsed this specific scenario many times, because they had. Hidden compartments behind false bulkheads, under floor panels, inside modified ballast tanks. Every one of them packed with bales of compressed cocaine, each one stamped with cartel markings, each one part of a shipment that had a street value exceeding $500 million. 40 tons, at 90% purity, enough to supply a significant fraction of the U.S. market for weeks. None of it would reach a port. The operation did not make headlines commensurate with what it actually represented. Drug interdiction at sea rarely does, but the architecture that executed it, the satellite that found a heat signature, the patrol aircraft that confirmed a radar contact, the helicopter that provided continuous targeting data to a surface boarding team, the destroyer whose combat system maintained a real-time operational picture throughout, is the same architecture that, pointed at a different class of target, constitutes one of the most capable maritime strike networks ever assembled. Task Force 36 is not primarily a counter-narcotics force. It operates across the Pacific and Caribbean corridors because those corridors carry approximately 15% of global seaborne trade. The same sea lanes that the Sinaloa cartel used to move cocaine that morning were used by container ships, tankers, and bulk carriers moving legitimate cargo between the Americas, Asia, and Europe. Keeping those lanes functional and enforced is the mission. Counter-narcotics is one application of a capability maintained for considerably larger purposes. Several days after the operation, the Pentagon confirmed the engagement publicly. The statement noted that F-35 aircraft were being added to the patrol architecture and that Task Force 36 was receiving an additional 2,000 personnel to expand coverage across both ocean corridors. The message embedded in those announcements was not directed at a cartel. For the crew of the semi-submersible that had believed the Pacific was wide enough to disappear into, the night had delivered a specific education. The ocean does not hide heat from a satellite at 500 kilometers. A hull designed to defeat radar does not defeat a towed acoustic array. Speed does not matter when the intercept geometry is being calculated by a combat system designed for ballistic missile defense. And no evasion tactic developed for outrunning a Coast Guard cutter survives contact with a system that shares targeting data from orbit to deck in under 2 seconds. They were not outrun. They were not outmaneuvered. They were already inside a net before they knew the net existed. That is what the integration of space-based sensors, AI-assisted classification, and networked weapons platforms actually produces in operational terms. Not a faster chase. The elimination of the chase as a concept. The outcome was determined at the moment the satellite logged a thermal anomaly. Everything that followed was execution. If this breakdown gave you something worth thinking about, subscribe and share it. More of these stories are worth telling, and your support is what makes it possible to keep telling them.